5th, 2025. My name is Claudia Balducci. I'm the chair of the committee this year, and I want to welcome you all here today. By way of background, the committee does accept comments in writing to a dedicated email address. The email address is kcccommit, that's kcccomitt @kingcounty.gov. Clerks, did we receive any written comments for this meeting earlier today?
No written comments were received.
All right, thanks very much. Let's move on to the roll. Clerk Stedman, would you please call the roll?
Thank you, Chair Balducci. Councilmember Lee.
Present.
Deputy Mayor Mork.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Moore.
Present.
Mayor Rossman.
Here.
Councilmember Sweet.
Here.
Councilmember Trout-Manuel.
Here.
Councilmember Hollingsworth. Councilmember Kettle.
Here.
Councilmember Saka. Commissioner Clark.
Here.
Commissioner Warren.
Present.
Commissioner Hushangi. Councilmember Dunn.
Here.
Chair Balducci.
Here.
You do have a quorum.
Thanks very much. Next, we have the approval of the minutes for both our December 4th and January 16th meetings. They are in the packet starting at page 4. Hopefully folks have had a chance to take a look. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Thank you. It's been moved by Vice Chair Mork. Any comments, questions, or changes on the minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed saying, any opposed say nay. The minutes are approved. Just a real brief chair's report. You will notice, colleagues, that we have a new clerk joining us today. From time to time, our clerks at the County Council rotate committees to accommodate schedules and to expand their experience. So Blake, who has done such a wonderful job with us the last few years, has been rotated and will be working on another committee this year. I will share our appreciation with him and thank him for all his work in keeping us organized the last 2 years. And I'd like to welcome Marka Stedman, who'll be our committee assistant this year. Marka has a great deal of experience, although I remember when we hired her. She's been around and she's worked on a number of committees, and I know that she will be an outstanding and professional staff for this committee. So welcome, Marka, to the Regional Water Quality Committee. In another update on personnel, last week, the King County Council selected a new member to fill a vacancy in District 5 that had been previously held by Councilmember Up the Grove, who was elected to be the State Lands Commissioner. And I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself, we selected Deshawn Quinn, a longtime leader in the community, high-ranking Metro employee, and a council member for, I'm going to get this wrong, the city of Tukwila, I want to say.
That's right.
Yeah, thank you. And he was sworn in, and we voted on his committee assignments and everything this week. So he is fully on board and part of the team. And those of you who know him know that we will be well served as he represents District 5 this year. The council also adopted our annual reorganization. It was a little delayed this year because of the vacancy. We did not want to settle all of our committee assignments until we were fully staffed. And I am very pleased to, again, have been selected to be the RWQC chair. It's been a great gig, I have to say. I really enjoy this work, and it's very important, and I enjoy working with all of you, and I'm looking forward to continuing the work we've started over the last few years. We got some big stuff ahead of us. So turning to today's meeting, our agenda today includes discussion of the Regional Wastewater Services Plan update, a briefing on the rather large Mouth of the Jewamish CSO projects, and a briefing on the history of the Robbinswood Agreement. And as you can see, we have a special guest today, one of the leaders and signatories of the original Robbinswood Agreement, former council member and I believe former RWQC chair, Larry Phillips. Thank you so much for being here to help us understand the history and sort of, I think it's really important to point the path forward in many of the decisions that we have ahead of us to understand what has worked well for us in the past.
Happy to help.
Thank you. All right, so before we get to those items, we'll start with our usual reports, starting with the chair of the MUPAC. Mr. McClellan, are you with us? John McClellan, paging John McClellan. Anybody see his name on the screen? I do not.
I am not seeing him, Chair Balducci. I
Yes.
can resend
Okay.
his invitation in case he's having difficulties.
Thank you for doing that. And while you do that, why don't we jump ahead and ask for the wastewater treatment division report? If you're ready to go, Director Girl, can you pick up for us?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me okay, Madam Chair?
We can. Thank you so much.
Right. All right. Thank you again. I always appreciate the opportunity to report to this committee. I've got several subjects. I'm going to start with biosolids and PFAS and then go on to a couple of other topics. Committee members may have seen in last Sunday's Seattle Times an article that highlighted wastewater treatment divisions, or WTD's, loop biosolids. This article came about after a Times reporter responded to a video news release that we distributed last December, featuring Central Washington farmers that rely on loop to improve soil conditions on their farms. We're going to work with council staff to make links to the article and our video available to RWQC members so you can easily access the materials after the meeting today. As committee members know, loop biosolids help to increase crop yields, improve water retention, and reduce soil erosion. These are all benefits that are important, especially as farmers are experiencing more frequent severe droughts due to climate change. So we're glad the reporter addressed these benefits. As a part of our work with the Times reporter, we provided a tour of our South Plant facilities. It's one of the places that we make loop. And we described the process to treat wastewater and produce the loop biosolids there. Given the national media attention to challenges addressing PFAS, we knew there would be an interest from the reporter in that subject too, and specifically PFAS in biosolids. So we did our best to share what we know transparently and completely and put the reporter in touch with others who would be knowledgeable on the subject. And if you read the article, you'll see he talked to a lot of different folks. So our goal is to make sure that biosolids that we produce for farmers and forestry managers continues to be protective of human and environmental health. We have continuously stayed compliant with all state regulations, and we've been testing loop and reporting results literally for decades. Now, in the fall of 2023, as PFAS was sort of arcing up in our national awareness, we began to proactively and voluntarily test our wastewater system for PFAS because we want to understand how these chemicals are showing up in the system, including in biosolids. In the coming months, we're going to make the testing results available to RWQC members, partner agencies, the general public, and we were going to continue to work with public health of Seattle, King County, and other experts to interpret those results, help put kind of a risk profile on it. And I want to underscore that we take any level of contamination in our products seriously, and we are looking to take all appropriate actions to promote human and environmental health. Of course, the most effective solution to any toxic chemical getting in a system is to prevent it from getting in the system in the first place, and to promote producer responsibility to pay the associated costs instead of having ratepayers pay that cost. Dealing with the impacts of PFAS is going to be an ongoing challenge. We can best meet that challenge by continuing to work together. I want to thank this committee for your leadership on this subject. If you have any other questions on this, please don't hesitate to get in touch with me, and we look forward to continuing that dialogue. Subject number 2 for me today is construction costs. On the agenda today, you'll be hearing a presentation on our Mouth of the Duwamish CSO program. It's really a collection of 5 different projects. And at your next meeting in March, you'll hear more about factors that affect our overall capital program. I want to give you a kind of a preview of coming attractions, or at least a foreshadowing. We continue to experience a very challenging market out there with market conditions and rising costs This is affecting the clean water industry. I talked with many of my peers, so this is certainly a problem locally, but it's also a problem nationally. This relates to construction materials, equipment, labor costs, all being high. Those costs impact our project costs and the capital costs. And it's essentially also a bit of a contractor market out there. There's a lot of public works being bid out there. If you look at us, you look at others, city and county agencies, the state, Sound Transit, there's a lot of work out there. So contractors can afford to be selective about which projects they bid on. And that tends to rise costs as well. So that high cost environment is resulting in some higher costs for MDCSO. You'll hear about that, and it's going to have an effect on our sewer rate forecast as well. We don't have the sewer rate on the RWQC agenda today, but we want to make sure that members keep fully apprised on the overall process to develop a sewer rate. The other committee, the one that John McClellan chairs, MUPAC, is undertaking their annual review of the sewer rate proposed for 2026 and the associated multi-year forecast. But starting with a preliminary briefing at the MUPAC Rates and Finance Subcommittee meeting tomorrow morning. So today's meeting is afternoon on the 5th. Their meeting is first thing on the 6th. Yesterday, we sent materials on the sewer rate to MUPAC members. And again, we're happy to work with council staff to make sure that those materials on the sewer rate are also provided to RWQC members so you can see those materials. And if you like, you could join in and observe that MUPAC subcommittee meeting so you can see that group in action as well. And as happens each year, MUPAC will be working on the annual rate process over these next few months. I believe a sewer rate briefing for RWQC is scheduled for your April 2nd meeting. So that's already on the calendar. And again, happy to give you more information as best we can. The executive under our calendar, the executive will transmit a proposed rate for 2026 to the county council in April, and then the council will need to adopt that rate by June 30th. So we're on the standard annual track. These processes are kind of running in parallel at the two committees. We're trying to keep everybody up to speed and up to date. Last comment is on the state legislature. We are in the middle of the legislative session. I think 3 or 3.5 weeks in. We are a couple of bills that we're watching. I wanted to share those. SB 5033 is a biosolids bill. So same bill, we understand that Senator Wilson is from the Vancouver, Washington area, introduced last year. This is a bill that would require the State Department of Ecology to establish testing and sampling schedules and protocols for PFAS and biosolids. Again, this is something we are already doing. So we've had discussions with Senator Wilson last year about the bill. If it's the same thing, we are happy to support it. It would provide a state framework, but again, we're already doing this. We understand this bill has a hearing on Friday. We're also following SB 5450, which has a companion in the House, HB 1670, that would require, again, Department of Ecology to establish a public website, provides information on unpermitted wastewater and CSO discharges based on information reported to Ecology by a permittee like us. We're generally supportive of the bills. It's another way to share information. This is information we already provide on King County's website. So I don't think it'll add any extra burden, and we're already out ahead of where this bill is. This bill is scheduled again for a public hearing on Friday. So we'll keep our eye on the legislative session as it goes and let you know if we see anything else that's important to report. And thank you, Madam Chair. That concludes my report for today.
Thank you, Director Gurl. Questions? Any questions? All right. We will move on. And I do see that MUPAC Chair John McClellan has been able to join the meeting. Welcome. And if you're ready, would you please go ahead and give your report?
I am ready, Chair, and my apologies for disturbing the agenda today. I will be as brief as possible. So MUPAC last met on January 26. We had a pretty full agenda. Part of that was re-electing our Vice Chair, Maria Coe from SPU, as well as Chair of our Engineering and Planning Subcommittee, Jacqueline Knopf from Bellevue, both of which have continued to be fantastic adds and participants and resources, not just to MUPAC, but to the exec team as well. Bob Elwell from Auburn was appointed to a second term on the Waterworks Committee, and we're still looking to fill a Waterworks Committee seat from a district participant. We discussed the charter for the RWSP update. We took a vote after some discussion, authorizing myself, the chair, to sign a final version as long as it was substantially the same as what had been offered for review. There had been a number of meetings, discussions, and agreements to some additional edits, particularly from participants from Sound Cities Alliance, which I believe, and I think we're all in agreement, were not substantial. They're more housekeeping, and I was favorable to that and concurred with those being assumed to be non-substantial. So happy with that moving forward. We heard a presentation on the sewer rate 101, kind of a reminder and some basic information again, which as always is always helpful. As far as today's meeting, we are very interested in the resolution and very interested in the discussion on the charter and how RWQC is viewing this these days. As usual, I like to reinforce that the work we do is very tied closely to what RWQC does, and we hope that we can coordinate our work plans and provide you folks on this committee with some value in the work that we do. The mouth of the Duwamish project is also very interesting because we anticipate that's going to have a big impact. It's going to have a big cost. And so we're interested in seeing how that plays out and being involved in understanding the plans and the costs as that is revealed as the months wear on here. And then last but not least, we understand Robbinswood Agreement is going to be spoken about. That's referred to on and off. It hasn't had a really good discussion at MUPAC. I'm looking forward to a good discussion here. I'd like to understand where RWQC stands on, I guess, the value of that now and what might be different if we were to do it again. And with that, Chair, I will end my report.
Thank you very much, Chair. Any questions for Mr. McClellan? I'll ask just one, and it might come up later, but in case you're having to leave. So is it correct to say that MUPAC is favorable, supports the version of the charter, the RWSP update charter that's before us today? We're being asked to take a position on it. Yeah.
Yes, I would say we are. We discussed it. We had some good discussion, some minor changes that fell out of that. And I'll just add very quickly that a lot of the value was in the conversations and the work that the working committee took on and did in developing, I guess, this relationship and discussions with WTD to understand this and how we might move forward with this. So the charter is kind of a two-dimensional reflection of a three-dimensional work that happened in real life.
Yeah, thank you. And I had to say that we've talked quite a bit in the last couple of years about the relationship among and between Wastewater Treatment Division, this committee, and MUPAC, and trying to make sure that we are all doing our role so that we get the best results possible. And I have to say, this is going to be a great opportunity this year to practice. Right. And I really appreciate that MUPAC folks who have joined into the working group too, because I know that they're going to carry a lot of the load here, and that is very helpful well, I'll speak for myself. It's helpful to me, and I think helpful to the committee. So thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments before we move into our agenda items? All right. So the first of our substantive items today is RWQC Resolution 2025-02. And let me just point out, we just got out of January. We already have two resolutions. And this one is a resolution declaring RWQC's support of the Regional Wastewater System Plan Update Charter. You'll recall that in January, we approved the scope And the next foundational document is this charter, and that's what we're considering today. WTD and members of the working group have been working hard for the last several months to develop this charter for the RWSP update process, and it's meant to describe the roles and responsibilities and an agreed upon process to get us through the update. I am going to ask our committee staff, central staff, Jenny Giambattista, to present a brief overview of the resolution that supports the charter, highlight the changes that have been made since we last reviewed this in January, and then we will hopefully be prepared to have discussion and take action. Jenny, please go ahead.
Thank you. Good afternoon, members of the committee. Jenny Giambattista, County Council staff. I'm on page 12 of your packet. The resolution, which is before you, is on page 15 of the packet, and it declares the committee's support for the attached charter. Specifically, on page 18 of the packet, you will see that the resolution states the RWQC declares its support of the Wastewater Treatment Division's Regional Wastewater Services Plan Update Charter, and that is attached as attachment A to this resolution. And then just below that, there's a statement, the RWQC requests that WTD brief the Regional Water Quality Committee on any proposed substantive changes to the RWSP update charter. As previously discussed, the RWSP update charter is intended to guide the multi-year process to update the RWSP. As you noted, Madam Chair, the charter was drafted by the RWSP Working Group, which was newly created forum for MUPAC, RWQC member staff, and Sound Cities Association staff to collaborate with WTD's RWSP project team through the development and successful adoption of the updated RWSP. The attached version reflects the changes to the charter since January 16th. That was the last RWQC committee meeting. And you can see all of the changes I've included in the packet. On page 37, there's a red line version where you can see all of those changes. Many of those changes are technical, clarifying changes and edits for consistency with the scope document, which was adopted last month. And then I want to note a couple other changes as well, specifically related to the working group. And you can see this on page 39 in the red line version, where the changes specify that the non-WTD membership of the working group will be agreed upon by the chair of MUPAC in consultation with the WTD director. Additionally, non-WTD working group members now have the option rather than the obligation to report out alongside WTD and co-author progress reports. These changes were requested by SCA. There are also additional changes related to the vision for clean water. Most of the changes were made so that the language is consistent with the scope document. Additionally, the description of the process for the development of the vision for clean water is removed from the charter, the body of the charter, and described further in Appendix C to reflect that the clean water vision is a separate parallel process from the RWSP update. Again, these changes were also requested by SCA. Additionally, you can see on page 53, this was at the request of the chair, additional clarification on the timelines for the final transmittal of the RWSP update. The charter was edited to specify the intended transmittal of the RWSP update is scheduled for mid-2029 and council adoption is anticipated by the end of 2029. That concludes my staff report, Madam Chair, on this item.
Thank you, Jenny. Okay, so again, the changes to the document are in the packet. As I read it, they're not very, it's not very substantively different from what we discussed last month. I will just say for my own purposes, I continue to struggle to understand the timeline, and I would like to keep that conversation open as we go forward for, perhaps we can complete this plan in less than 4 years, but that's for another day. Today, we're talking about the scope, or not the scope, the charter. So any discussion before we get to a motion and action? Vice Chair Moore, please go ahead.
Thank you. While the SEA caucus is prepared to vote today, I want to flag that we have some remaining questions about the timelines. Thank you, Chair, for mentioning that as well. In the table at the end of the charter. In particular, the financial policies are integrally tied to a lot of policy conversations we need to have, including the Robbinswood discussion we're having later in committee today. This is one area we want to reserve the ability to revisit those timelines in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Warren.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that I submitted a number of comments directly to Darren, I think is who is working on this, and a number of those were incorporated into the final document.
Thank you for doing that. It's always appreciated. Can I ask a question just following up on Deputy Mayor Mork's comment? Let's suppose that as we approve this resolution, we all agree to the charter, and we start working through the scope and the plan, the planning process. And if RWQC or MUPAC or both decide, we really want to front load some discussion, maybe about the financial policies, because the policy discussion we're having is kind of inextricably linked to financing. Is that something that we could do at that point, or would it become difficult because you've already, and this, when I say you here, I think I'm talking to the wastewater treatment division, because you will all have already set on a path that will be difficult to deviate from once you're on it?
Well, I'll say we're asking the question a bit in the abstract today, and
Yeah.
And so I'll say I think especially with the longer timeline, there's probably flexibility that we can build into here to make some pivots if the committee finds the need to focus on a particular area that would have been later and shifted earlier, or to do the reverse. So I'll say right now, I think we would be happy to entertain that need and see what we can do to respond as best as we can to it. And if we give you an implication like, well, that'll change something down here, as long as we know we're going to change something 2 steps from now, we'll try to give you an implication. But I would say in general, Madam Chair, we will do our best to say yes to that need.
Appreciate that. And I think as a practical matter, you're very right. This is a wholly hypothetical question that I'm asking without any details to it today. But as a practical matter, if we hit a point anywhere in this process where you're asking this group a policy question, and the members of this group are struggling to answer that policy question without understanding cost implications, the issue will rear its head and will have to be dealt with somehow, right? So we'll undoubtedly have that conversation.
I think so. You're hitting on what's going to be an ongoing challenge for us, is that we always want to know, well, what's the benefit or the value? What's the cost? Right. And to some extent, it's going to be hard to with super precision isolate one particular thing from everything else and then hold that for a future thing as we look at other changes. So we're going to have to, I think, both keep that specific issue, deal with it as best we can, but then if that changes because something else changed later and has an implication, try to shine a light on that so folks know what's happening. So we'll do our best to do that.
And the last thing I'll say on this topic, there is a final step in any approval process. This body will have a final opportunity at the end of all the planning to make their recommendation to the county council and say, we recommend you adopt this plan in all its parts, or we recommend you adopt this plan, but we have some concerns about some of the parts, or whatever we say at that moment. And then the county council gets to have a final vote and opportunities to amend and all of the above. So it will be step by step, but then it comes together at the end. And I think that's something to keep in mind. Councilmember Lee, you had your hand up. I'm sorry, I took a moment.
I had my hands up, but I was going to say something, but I would like to wait for the motion first.
Okay.
He said what I want to say. Thank you.
Works for me. Thank you. That is a great segue. Is there a motion to approve resolution RWQC 2025-02?
So moved.
It's been moved by Deputy Mayor Mork. Any further discussion? Councilmember Lee.
Thank you. I want to, on behalf of City of Bellevue, thank the working group members, MUPAC and WTD, for their work on the charter. I believe that it confines a good foundation for working through the complex issues in the RWSP. I hope that we are all able to adapt and learn through the process about the best way to work with and learn from one another. The charter is not perfect, but I'm supportive today. And finally, as WTD, MUPAC, and the working group test out the workflow outlined in the charter, we should be able to open to adjustments as needed. So I support, and on behalf of the City of Bellevue, this resolution. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilmember Lee. That might be a good moment to call for the vote. Are people ready to vote? Want to make sure no other comments. All right. All those in favor of approving oh my gosh, I've lost it. Sorry.
Chair
Hang on.
Balducci, did you want me to do a roll call vote for this?
We could. Well, you want to? It's formal enough. All right.
It's your choice.
On resolution R 2025-02, clerk, would you please call the roll?
Thank you, Chair Balducci.
Thank you.
Councilmember Lee,
Yay.
Deputy Mayor Mork,
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Moore,
Aye.
Mayor Rossman,
Aye.
Councilmember Kettle,
Aye.
Councilmember Saka, Commissioner Clark,
Aye.
Commissioner Warren,
Aye.
Councilmember Dunn,
Aye.
Chair Balducci.
Aye.
The vote is 8.5 yes and 0 no's.
Very good. By our vote, we have approved RWQC resolution 2025-02. And I just want to acknowledge Councilmember Lee. It is not perfect, as nothing in this life generally is, but it sets us on a path that we have been trying to get on for a while. And I think this is a very positive step forward. I want to thank the wastewater treatment folks. And as we mentioned, the working group from MUPAC, they really helped us to move forward. And now we're ready to go. All right, this next, so we've got two briefings and a guest. So I just want to make sure that we get through the briefings expeditiously and to, be thankful of, be appreciative of the guest time. So Darren Greavy, I would like to call on from Wastewater Treatment Division to talk about the vision process for the Regional Wastewater Services Plan update. Welcome, Mr. Greavy. Thanks for coming back.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Really nice to see you all again. Let me share my screen here. Make sure you can all see this. As I said, good to see you all. A special good to see you to Councilmember Phillips. From the days of TDR, council member, to the Land Conservation Initiative days when then, now I should say now, Councilmember Deshaun Quinn and you chaired the advisory group to that, and now to wastewater. I seem to be following you around even in retirement, so very nice to see you as well. Chair, I will be very brief in my presentation. We want to provide the committee a quick update on the process for the Vision for Clean Water. And I will start with the final product that we will have ready towards the end of this year. The final vision package will include 3 components: a vision statement that is both brief and high level, a set of specific and actionable goals that will support the vision statement, and finally, foundational to all of this will be summary descriptions of the main drivers that are creating our challenges and the opportunities we have to improve our regional wastewater system. With every challenge comes an opportunity, and we want to ensure that this vision and this RWSP update do not miss important opportunities. You have all seen this timeline. We started this vision development work in the 4th quarter of last year, and it will continue through March of this year through next month. And then starting in Q2, so in April, May, and in June, we will be sharing those vision options and engaging not only this committee, but MUPAC, as well as external partners on gathering input and feedback on those vision options. And then over the summer months of July, August, and September, we will be refining those vision options based on the input we receive. But more specific to this committee, the touch points that lie ahead on vision. Today, we're briefing you here on February 5th. Next month, we're going to share with you the outreach and engagement we have done to date on vision. And then we're going to share with you the important foundational document, the challenges and opportunities. It's really helping set the frame and foundation to the set of vision options. So we will be coming to you next month with these challenges and opportunities. And then following that in April, we're going to share with you the emerging themes we've heard through discussions and dialogues with thought leaders, both locally and nationally and internationally, on vision ideas and themes in the wastewater and water quality space, and share those with you in April. And then in the May and June timeline, in May, we'll roll out a set of vision options to this committee. And at that time, gather your input and feedback. You'll have ample time to weigh in on these set of vision options at your May meeting. And then the next month in June, there'll be a second opportunity for this committee to provide us feedback and input on these set of vision options. And then we'll take that information and that knowledge and what you provided us and refine those over the months of the summer months, like I mentioned. And we expect the county executive to announce the vision in the early part of the 4th quarter of this year. So that's the path ahead, the roadmap ahead. I promised I'd keep this short, so I'll just stop there. And if anyone has any questions.
Thank you, Darren. Can I ask to pull down the?
You can.
If you may.
If I can
Thank
find
you.
it.
It's just easier to see people that way. Any
Yes.
comments or questions? Thank you. I'm really interested. I'm really interested in this work. I think it's a very good idea to have a very long-range vision that goes well beyond the 20-year update of the plan that we are doing, so that we keep our eyes on what we're trying to accomplish and our goals and our ambitions for the system as we are doing the more granular work of updating a plan. So I think this was a good idea, and I appreciate the executive branch for bringing it forward. It is undoubtedly going to trigger some of the discussion we were having previously, which is having a vision. You know, what does that do to our ability to deliver on the vision and the, you know, sort of really pragmatic concerns that come along with that. But it's always good to start with a vision. So any other comments on this before we move to our next presentation? Thank you. Thank you, Darren. We'll see you throughout the year.
Thank you.
All right. Next is our briefing on the Mouth of the Duwamish project. Members will recall that this is a suite of projects that is being undertaken as part of the modified CSO consent decree. It is expected to be the most expensive project in our capital improvement program. So I invited Wastewater Treatment Division here today to help us get up to speed on the project. This will likely be one of several briefings that we have. We're also working on tours of various things, and this is on the list. Someday, I think we would do well to get down there and eyeball the projects in person. So, but for today, we're joined by WTD staff member Stan Hummel, who is the combined sewer overflow delivery manager within the wastewater treatment division. Welcome, Mr. Hummel. We're glad to have you here today.
Thank you. Can you all see the slideshow?
We can, but it's not in slide format. Like we can see your,
Okay,
Yeah.
let me see if I can.
you just want to hit the display thing.
Oops.
There you, oh, so close.
Oh, I hit the wrong button. Let's try that again.
Let's try that again.
And let me find the presentation. I'll have to reopen it.
Glad I'm not the only
Pardon
one
me
who talks
for-
to my computer as I operate it. I find it helps to tell it what I'm trying to tell it how to do.
Okay. Now let's share.
Okay, you are sharing.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you for having me, Madam Chair, committee members. Today I'm going to talk about the Mouth of Duwamish program. Well, let's see, I'm not quite. I'll walk through the agenda here. First of all, I'm going to provide an overview of the facilities, then discuss the work that WTD is doing and the program team to identify the best solution for this program, and then our facilities approach and timeline. This shows a map of the service area, basically from Pioneer Square south to Georgetown. And what you see here are 5 regulator stations. From the north, we have the King Street, followed by the Kingdom, Lander Street, and Hanford regulator. Each of those regulator stations regulate flow on the Elliott Bay Interceptor, which conveys flow to the West Point treatment plant. And during rainstorms, since this is a combined system, the flows exceed the capacity of the Elliott Bay Interceptor and are discharged at each of these regulator stations. We also have the Chelan Avenue regulator, which is over on the West Seattle Delridge side and discharges into the West Waterway. So each of these regulators during rainstorms will discharge untreated combined sewage, which consists of dilute stormwater and sanitary sewage directly to receiving waters in the East Waterway in Elliott Bay. The Mouth of Duwamish Wet Weather Facilities Program is an integrated program to address the pollution from these 5 outfalls. We are also coordinating with Seattle Public Utilities, who has some CSOs in that area, 3 CSOs. They're very small relative to the volumes that we treat, and there may be an opportunity to include those CSOs in our program with appropriate cost sharing. I would also like to add that completion of this program is mandated by the federal consent decree that was recently modified and approved by the council. And so we have certain consent decree milestones and scheduled to meet here for this program. The service area consists of the area in Soto and extends east to Beacon Hill area and Rainier Valley area. So the green crosshatched area shows the Beacon Hill and Rainier Valley, and then the area in Soto. We also have near Chelan the service area, or basically the drainage basin tributary to this CSO in purple. The capacity needs are similar to secondary treatment capacity at South Plant during wet weather conditions. Want to just say that to give you a sense of the scale or the magnitude of the problem that needs to be solved. South Plant typically has, during wet weather conditions, has a flow over 200 million gallons per day. We have flows that discharge from these regulators over 200 million gallons per day during these wet weather events. So the goal of the Mouth of Duwamish program is to improve water quality in the Duwamish River and Elliott Bay. It will require new facilities to minimize that pollution. And it also, another goal is to meet the legal requirement to comply with the Clean Water Act, the consent decree, and to control overflows at each outfall to no more than one release per year. So the current phase of this program, we have moved this into the delivery phase now that we have a modified consent decree. So we are looking at developing an engineering report, otherwise referred to as a facility plan for submittal to ecology. We are developing and evaluating different alternative system configurations, basically looking at what technological options as well as what conveyance alignments or treatment technology would be employed to control the CSOs. And we're looking to select a system that can, based on factors like cost, schedule, as well as meeting regulatory requirements. So we are here in the facility planning stage, looking to develop and submit an engineering report to the Department of Ecology later in 2025, followed by design, construction, and operations. The consent decree requirement for completion of this program is 2034. Some of the methods that we're looking at in our alternatives review is storage, which could consist of underground tanks, tunnels, or pipes to store flows during heavy storms. And those flows could be transferred back into the treatment system for eventual treatment at West Point after the storm. To treat it, which is to build a high rate clarification system to treat flows that are too large to store. I'm referring to the specific technology that we're utilizing at the Georgetown Wet Weather Treatment Station, or to convey it, basically move it, build new pipelines, or increase the size of the facilities. This, our studies are leading us to conclusion that a wet weather treatment station is likely the best, most cost-effective alternative, similar in technology to the Georgetown Wet Weather Treatment Station, which was placed in service in 2022. Georgetown has a capacity of 70 million gallons per day. For the Mouth of Duwamish facilities, we're looking at a facility that's over 3 times the size, or roughly needing a peak hydraulic capacity of 240 million gallons per day. So this is the program area that we're looking at for the regulators, where we're basically looking at or evaluating different alignments and a site for a wet weather treatment station encompassing King Street, Kingdome, Lander, and Hanford. Lander Street and Hanford number 2 regulators are where the preponderance of volume is discharged annually. And so some of the examples of projects that we've constructed include storage projects such as the Rainier Valley Wet Weather Storage, a very small storage tank, a wet weather treatment station, I mentioned Georgetown, or pipelines or tunnels that can be used both to convey and to store flows. And the Henderson ML King CSO control project is an example. We also need to once treated, discharge the flow through a new outfall somewhere in the East Waterway or Elliott Bay. So as part of identifying the best solution, we are taking into consideration the schedule. This is going to be a large and complex system, and the permitting complexity will drive in part the schedule for getting the necessary local, state, and federal approvals. O&M considerations, we need to build a system that can be reliably operated by our operators, reliably maintained, and this is a system that, or the treatment part of it, will be utilized on an intermittent basis. So it's not always going to be operating. It needs to be able to turn on when the storm is coming, run through the storm, and then turn off, much as we do at Georgetown. Community is a large consideration here. Building this system in the busy SoDo area will have short-term, long-term impacts that we hope to mitigate and will mitigate, but there will be some disruptions to traffic, bus routes, and pedestrian mobility. Cost is a very big component of this. I think you may be aware that the cost of this system is very large. It's one of the larger projects that we have done. And so finding ways to minimize and control costs will be important. And then environmental considerations, evaluating the alternatives based on their impacts to air, water, and shorelines. We are centering the community in our infrastructure, listening first in an overburdened community. We have already conducted extensive community outreach to connect with the community and listen to their concerns. We are doing our research and have consulted many of the organizational plans to better understand the needs of the community and the organizations that represent the community. We are making ourselves available and meeting people where they are at as we build our public engagement plan. We are working to understand the likely impacts. There are a lot of public sector activities in SoDo, and the construction of this project will have impacts, including potential impacts to traffic. WTD has a long history of WTD capital program implementation, and we are leaning into this experience to be the least disruptive, as possible. And then finally, we're centering community needs. Our goal is to build facilities that work and fit within a community, and where appropriate, provide community benefits. We will continue to provide outreach to community-based organizations in the communities that would be affected by our proposal. So some upcoming consideration to touch on, any option that requires a wet weather treatment station would also require that we acquire 4 to 8 acres in SoDo. So we would likely acquire this property and potentially have impacts on businesses and property owners that we would work with. We will also need permanent and temporary easements for pipelines, outfall, and other system needs. As we prepare for construction, we acknowledge that there will be impacts that we will need to work through. Traffic congestion, I've mentioned, potential lane or road closures, and impacts to parking. All are of concern to us. Cameron mentioned in his director's remarks that this information package has gone out for the MUPAC Rates and Finance Committee, which it will be tomorrow. So what I want to touch on here and perhaps build on some of Cameron's comments is that some of the cost trends and drivers for the increase in the program costs from previous planning level estimates that have been provided for the longer term rate projections. One of the drivers is climate change considerations, increasing the size of facilities. As we look at our forecast models, which forecast increasing intensity rainstorms in the future, we need to build a system that will not only meet regulations when it comes online, but well into the future, considering this the magnitude of this capital investment. So we are looking at increasing the flow capacity of this facility, recognizing that we will have more flow to deal with as these climate predictions materialize. The conveyance, we now have alignments for the outfall and conveyance pipes and can better understand and forecast the needs and what it will cost and construction techniques for each of these alignments. So that's allowing us to improve the accuracy of our cost estimates and really understand the environment that we're working with. That's another driver, is just some better information that we're generating as a project team. And in some cases, we're doing field work and getting a better idea of the soil conditions. Geotechnical environmental factors are being better understood. As I mentioned, we're doing geotechnical work in the area because most of you are aware the area in Soto is primarily fill. You have to go a long, long ways to get to competent soils. And so to build something that will last requires a lot of ground preparation work to improve the conditions for foundations. Some of the cost trends and drivers are the contracting market. Over the past few years, we've seen a significant run up in the cost of materials. It's gone up roughly 20 to 30%. This has had quite an effect on the cost to build projects. Labor escalation has gone up quite significantly. And then Cameron mentioned this, we have concurrent projects, other agencies, including WashDOT, Sound Transit, the City of Seattle. Everybody's busy. Everybody seems to have large programs that they're trying to implement. And so we are competing and contractors are being selective. And there are also labor shortages for construction workers and engineering. So one of the things that we are working on is we are doing outreach to the construction industry to really understand what work they're interested in, and hopefully positioning WTD as the owner of choice, so that we know that as we proceed with our contracting, that we will have interested bidders, hopefully good competition to help us manage those prices. I want to touch on some of the tools that we are using to contain costs. We are utilizing a program management consultant that is supplementing WTD staff in terms of setting up and managing this consultant or the project team. The program management consultant works independently from the engineering team or the designer of record to review work products and review costs so that we can help ascertain and increase our certainty around the veracity of cost estimates. This program management consultant is also supporting us with program risk management, cost estimating, and scheduling. We will be performing value analysis and value engineering every step of the way as this project progresses towards and through design to optimize the value of what we are doing and identify potential cost savings. We are employing risk management practices to identify risks that potentially can affect the project and to identify potential mitigation measures to take to manage and contain those risks. And then we are also strongly considering the use of collaborative delivery as a technique for delivering these contracts that will be needed to get the contractors involved during the design phase to help us manage risk, plan construction, bring cost certainty to the project, and hopefully improve our schedule performance. So, and I mentioned earlier, we will continue our outreach to the contracting industry as we get closer to advertising this work. This is our facilities delivery approach. We are the owner, King County Wastewater Treatment Division. On the left, we have an engineering report as a deliverable that will go into the Department of Ecology in late 2025. That is being generated by the Jacobs engineering team. They are performing the engineering services for this program. We also have what's called the PMOA, or the Program Manager Owner Advisor. As I mentioned earlier, they're providing support services to King County staff to manage this overall program. And then we will have future contracts for design and construction that will be issued as we proceed with design. So our roadmap to the future shows the orange circle shows where we are. We are in the facility planning phase. This spring, we are working towards taking or making a recommendation on the best apparent system alternative to our management and the executive department to hopefully select the best alternative. We will proceed to gate 2 as parlance for basically the gate governance process that WTD employs to make decisions, get a decision on the specific alternative, and then write that alternative up in the facility plan that will be submitted to Ecology in late 2025. We will be concurrently moving forward into the design phase, moving towards detailed design or gate 3, 30%, which encompasses 30% design in 2026 to get to a construction start in roughly 2028 timeframe in order to get these projects or contracts completed by 2034, the consent decree completion. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate the level of detail and thought you put into the presentation. It is, as you can imagine, a topic of keen interest to the committee. I'm going to open it up for questions and comments now. Let me just give a time check here. We have scheduled for this item until about 4:20, so a few more minutes of discussion, and then I'd like to get to our guests. All right, so starting with Councilmember Sweet, followed by Councilmember Kettle.
Just very quickly, I'm interested in what the estimated final cost is going to be, including design and construction.
The estimated final cost is $3.4 billion. And that is the cost at the completion of construction. So when the project is completed or the program is completed, it will have cost $3.4 billion. That equates to roughly $2.8 billion in today's dollars.
Thank you, Stan.
Thank you. Councilmember Kettle.
Yes, thank you, Chair Balducci. And Mr. Hummel, I really appreciate this briefing. Thank you so much. It's very important, as we've seen, to protect our waterways, and particularly as it relates to Duwamish River, and as you noted in Soto. And so thank you for this, and very much of interest for different reasons. And I think it's key, that we do address the CSOs and then really get a handle too, in terms of, the impacts and all that. As some of you may have known, I've said that, the Port of Seattle is not just the Port of Seattle, but the Port of King County and the state of Washington. And, so ensuring, the function of the port and everything else that relates to that is very important. So find this briefing to achieve this need that we have very interesting, and would like to follow up with you too on it, if I could.
Thank you.
And I just been reminded that we will have another briefing next month on capital, the larger capital program and trends. So a lot of the topics that came up that are affecting the cost trend on this large suite of projects will be back again. Commissioner Warren, followed by Deputy Mayor Mork.
Yeah, and this is something that probably can't be answered today, but it's a future time or in a separate report. The question is, this is one of many CSO projects that we have seen or will see, or maybe there are more in the future. It's somewhat mysterious to me at this point what all those are. So it would be nice if we had some kind of information that kind of gave a historical perspective of which CSO projects have been already built, which ones are underway, which ones are not yet covered by the consent decrees and are for the future, and also which ones are the responsibility of Seattle versus King County, because it's kind of a holistic program, but we're just seeing one little piece of it at this time. So it'd be nice to see a more comprehensive report on kind of the whole program. The second one is I did review the MUPAC material for tomorrow and looking at rate impacts. And obviously there will be significant impacts to rates as a result of this project. And the question is, and this could be answered as part of next month, is what is the impact on other capital programs as a result of this? My look at it is, it looks like some programs, projects are being moved around, redefined, or delayed in order to try to accommodate this project without seeing the full cost impact of all the projects we already have programmed plus this one. So if we could have kind of a report that would kind of help define that in terms of what attempt is being made to manage capital programs and manage rate impacts. And the last question, real easy one maybe, on this CSO project, I'm trying to get a kind of comparison to those of us who don't have combined sewers and understanding what the relative amount of I&I that are part of this project. And so maybe you could give me an estimate of like how much of the total flow at peak storm events is actually sewerage versus how much of it is stormwater and I&I.
Thank you for all those questions or requests. With regard, and I think we can work on these. I think on the last question, I couldn't tell you without consulting with our hydraulic modelers what the proportion of the flows, those peak flows, is I&I relative to stormwater and sanitary sewage, but we can certainly look into that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So I'm going to ask Jenny on staff if you could also help with follow-ups and make sure that information that's provided in response to questions here gets distributed to the committee. Thank you.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Mork.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just kind of like to follow up Commissioner Warren's questions. Transparency is so key. We really appreciate efforts that WTD has done with transparency, and it's what we need to have. And we're all in this, we're all listening. We all are very interested in what's going on, and we really appreciate hearing about it. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councilmember Kettle.
Yes, thanks. Thank you, Chair Balducci. For Commissioner Warren, I just wanted to follow up and say that I too would it'd be good to have like a big picture, as you were saying. But just to add, there is 3 smaller CSOs that are part of this Lower Duwamish. I'm not sure if that was I don't think it was in the briefing, but just to kind of fill in, there are 3 small CSOs that fall with SPU that are going to be working. I don't know the exact details concurrently, basically. And so there is some additional pieces as part of this with Seattle specific. And but to your general point, having the context is always a good thing. And and key here is to with the consent decree do right by our waterways. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. All right, a lot of interest in that discussion. Director Girl, did you want to say something maybe to close out here?
Yeah, I think all of these are really good questions, and we're delighted to follow up and make sure the committee gets answers to all of these. I'll look to kind of working with Jenny to see what we can do as a supplement to today, and also maybe building into next month's presentation, because some of these will probably benefit from graphics and kind of a little more thorough look. So I think mostly I would say we'll probably look to answer these in the next month larger capital. But if there's a burning thing, I can even give you a quick answer on any of these right now if anybody needs a right now answer.
I am going to thank you for that offer and ask that we take it up next meeting or in between meetings so that we can make sure to get to our next item. But really, really appreciate that and the presentation. This was very informative. There's a lot going on, as you can tell. There's a lot of interest in understanding it all and how it fits together and what it means for the future. And that is, those are the big questions here at this committee. And I also think that is let me say, we've lost him. But thank you to the presenter. That was an excellent presentation and very, very helpful. And we look forward to hearing more, Mr. Hummel. But it's a really good segue into our next and final briefing, and that is about a look back at the Robbinswood Agreement. So first of all, I want to thank Commissioner Warren, who suggested that we do this briefing, very timely. And we've talked about it here. Anybody who's been here for any amount of time has heard the term the Robbinswood Agreement and has some sense of what it is and what it did. And so we are starting now with our approval of the resolution on our charter and the scope last month to start to plan for the next 30 years with a vision for beyond that. And we are going to have to address many of the same questions policymakers wrestled with 30 years ago. And, they all fall under a similar category. It is the evergreen question for us. It is, what is our vision for the future of our region, for our region's waters? A number of us, when we display a background that we want the world to see, show the waters of the north of our state, of our part of the state, we are we are all committed to and benefit by having clean, healthy water and marine environment. And we're a growing region with growing needs for infrastructure, even now, even after COVID, and I imagine growth will tick up again. And the challenges continue to evolve. We've talked here about PFAS and some other challenges that were not on the radar screen when the last plan was updated, but they were looking at different challenges then that were the technical challenges of maintaining water cleanliness. And you shake all that up in a barrel and pull out, a plan. There's the evergreen question of who benefits and who pays, right? And so when I went back and first read the Robbinswood Agreement, and I would recommend it to anybody who has not done so. It's not that hard to read. It's actually a very readable document, not terribly long, and it sets out a framework and some key principles around that question. of how do we continue to work together as a region with different systems in different places and different challenges and different investments, and still work together and not have the system come apart or not. And that we've been talking about this exact thing here when I first came on as chair about governance and how do we hang together. I will just kick this off by saying I am a big believer in regionalism. I think that working together is the only way to achieve all of our goals and do the best we can to maintain the cleanliness of our air, our water, to maintain our transportation system and our criminal justice system and all the places where our interests come together and we all have a role to play together. And so I'm very excited to have this conversation today because I do think that Robbinswood set a path that held for decades and really set a set of principles and agreements that enabled the region to work together on this very expensive, very important system. And I feel that we're reaching a point with this new plan where we very likely want to have that discussion again, but it's always great to ground ourselves in history. So I am so excited to have WTD here is going to provide an overview of the agreement. And then we are so fortunate to have former King County Council Chair Larry Phillips to share some of the history and context because he was there. He served on the King County Council from 1992 to 2006. As I said earlier, he was a chair of this committee and one of the signatories to the Robbinswood Agreement. So we're not going to do a super deep dive, but we will set a level, hopefully, that people can understand. And the last thing I want to say is if we do decide collectively to get together again and update the Robbinswood Agreement, I am going to propose that we hold that meeting at Soaring Eagle Park because I want it to be the Soaring Eagle Agreement. That's just like my little thing. I want to have a really awesome name for whatever comes out of it. All right. So let's ask Director Gurl to start us off and then we can have the discussion with Councilmember Phillips.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And I can't imagine a better table setting than you did just now. Now, I was not there for the Robbinswood Agreement, so I am reading for some notes here, and I would be delighted for Chair Phillips to add or correct any of my comments. This is a high-level summary, as the chair said, on sort of key points associated with the agreement and how they're reflected in the Regional Wastewater Services Plan in rough chronological order. The agreement called Robbinswood followed a retreat that took place at, I believe, Robbinswood Park in Bellevue. I've been there. It's a lovely park. While the Regional Wastewater Services Plan was pending at the County Council. Points of consensus from the discussions at Robbinswood were laid out in a letter dated November 16, 1998, from RWQC members who signed a letter to then Executive Ron Sims. And as outlined in the agreement, the guiding principles from that retreat included the all for one and one for all from this day forward statement. And that means a regional system supported by a consistent uniform rate structure. Also meant a commitment to protecting water quality, which is our core mission, along with protecting public health. And under the agreement, RWQC would be providing substantive review of RWSP implementation, and rates would be uniform for existing and new customers while achieving also a growth pays for growth principle. That's an important one that came out of that agreement. The agreement also outlined how costs for system capacity to serve new connections are recovered through both the sewer rate and the capacity charge paid by new connections. That is a function we still do here at WTD is our capacity charge program. And it describes how costs are allocated between existing and new connections. At the time, Seattle paid what was known as a CSO benefit charge. That charge under the agreement would be discontinued once a cap in state statute, which limited the amount of that monthly capacity charge to not more than $10.50, was lifted by the state legislature. In separated portions of the system, so outside of the greater Seattle area, county would also pay for pilot projects to assess the effectiveness of I&I control. The agreement also provides for RWQC review I&I programs, CSO programs, and the financial implications of all of the policies that are in the plan. Council adopted the RWSP in November 1999 as an amendment to our comprehensive water pollution abatement plan. That's the original plan adopted by the old Metro government that was, subsumed into King County. We are still amending that original plan. State legislation eventually did remove that capacity charge cap. That legislation took effect in year 2000. And then the King County Council approved an ordinance in 2001 that aligned the capacity charge with the points outlined in Robbinswood. Capacity charge has risen from that original capped level, and my colleagues can correct me, but I think it's hovering in the mid $70 for an equivalent single-family home, roughly. So much higher than the original $10. With the implementation of the policies, Seattle's combined sewer overflow benefit charge was then discontinued. So growth pays for growth, take the capacity charge cap off, have that charge reflect the cost of buying into the system, and then the Seattle benefit charge be discontinued. Those are some of the key kind of implementation steps that were associated with Robbinswood. And as the chair said, the Robbinswood Agreement is foundation to the regional partnership and the policies that have guided our regional wastewater system since 1999. And now we'll look forward to Councilmember Phillips. He can add or correct any of my summary. And we appreciate he's been joining us today too. Thanks.
Well, thank you, Cameron. And again, welcome, Larry. Welcome back, I should say. And I don't know if you have a way you want to proceed, but I think you can hear some of the basic questions are like, can you share more about the context at the time? What were the issues the region was dealing with? How did it come about? In your view, what did the Robbinswood Agreement do for the region? So, but please proceed however works best for you.
Sure. It's great to be with you, to see so many familiar faces, and also to deal with, hopefully in a helpful way, many of the issues that we've struggled with them are still here today, and you're wrestling with them now. I do think they're in the context of some enormous success for the region, which I can come back to in a minute. I will just give you a little bit of context, and that is that there's so much to talk about here, but I'll try and be brief. But in the 90s, actually 70s, 80s, and 90s, we were really struggling with growth really overwhelming the region. It overwhelmed our transportation system. Congestion was on everybody's mind. Sprawl was in every broadcast and newspaper practically every day or every week, how to rein it in and deal with it. We had Democrats, Republicans, independents screaming for a Stage Growth Management Act. And in the context of all that, we were also dealing with how to deal with a regional system as it relates to wastewater. In addition to that, Federal District Judge Bill Dwyer entertained a lawsuit that was saying that the old Metro system was unconstitutional. And we had to wrestle with what would happen to Metro in that context. He gave us a final decision of get it done in 1 year. And if you don't get it done within a year, I will simply fold Metro into King County, and it will just be a department within King County. So we had to scramble to have a series of conversations with our regional partners at City of Seattle, Suburban Cities Association, and come up with a proposal that would meet the challenge of the time, meet his challenges, what to do and make it a constitutional government at the same time, have services and payment for services that were accepted by the public and accepted in a way in which we could get on with delivering these services for wastewater treatment. They were very challenging times. I'm going to just say right now, whatever we faced then and whatever you face now in making these decisions pales by comparison to what Jim Ellis and an earlier generation had to do with just starting and paying for the cleanup of Lake Washington. And I will go back a little bit. I wasn't one of those kids on the shore of Lake Washington in the picture with the crew cuts and the blonde hair and the t-shirts staring at Lake Washington, couldn't swim, but I could have been. My sisters and I grew up on the shores of Lake Washington, and there were days when we would wander down the beach. It was great, wonderful time in the summer, couldn't go swimming, beach closed because of chlorophyll or fecal matter in the waters. That left an impression. And fortunately, by the time I was in college, Lake Washington had largely been cleaned up. And so you could swim in it any day in the summertime. So that shows you what a previous generation can do when they set their minds to getting a big project done for the region with huge benefits. And if you haven't read Jim Ellis's memoir, which is now published and out, I would encourage you to do so. An extraordinary lifetime in so many different endeavors, but the most compelling to me was the cleanup of Lake Washington, and largely because of the obstacles that had to be overcome and were overcome successfully, and set a legacy for all of us to deal with, standing essentially on that generation's shoulders to clean up a treasure for all of us. And we're certainly glad that he did. We also found a way to pay for it, which was the leaning in and the leadership issue that we tried to carry on as we dealt with the growth issues of that period of time, and then the expansion of the system to meet the challenge of growth at the time. I will tell you there's another element of this which was critical, and that is, as a relatively new council member at the time and chair of the Water Quality Committee, I had a young staffer come over delivering a message for the county executive, saying, sort of carrying hat in hand and being very uneasy in the presentation. Council member, I hate to tell you this, but our growth projections are off by a decade. We are going to have to expand the system 10 years sooner than anybody thought. Sorry about that. And I asked, well, how long does it take to build this? When is that date? They said, well, it's about 10 years now, or ecology will shut us down. That's a whole nother topic you need to consider. And I said, so how long does it take to build one of these things or expand the existing? He said, oh, about a decade. So we had virtually no time in which to wrestle with all these issues I've just talked about, folding Metro into King County, dealing with growth that was overwhelming us, dealing with a system that was now demanding that it be expanded to accommodate growth, and meeting the public's demand that, oh yes, clean water, legacy of Lake Washington, we expect you to get that done as well. So it was challenging, and we had a great staff lending a hand from wastewater, from King County, from our budget office, from the city of Seattle, and from the Suburban Cities Association, who really took up the cudgel, if you will, to get us done in a timely fashion and to get this moving forward. That would take a plan, and then it would take the means by which to pay for it, which Chair Balducci, we didn't just sort of pick a place out of a hat and go to Robbinswood and Bellevue. That was strategic. We did not want to meet in the courthouse, and we did not want to meet in the city of Seattle. We wanted to meet at a place that was central to the region on the shores of Lake Washington and show good faith that we meant it. It would be a regional solution. We'd come together and talk about it as regional leaders on this issue. So we met at Robbinswood. How could you find fault with a place called Robbinswood, right? So we met at Robbinswood, and probably the most important thing is we came together as leaders on the Regional Water Quality Committee and leaders on this issue in the community. I wanted to commend Commissioner Warren and others who say, please give me as much information as you can, because transparency is critically important. These are big projects, they are costly, but you make much better decisions when you're informed. And so the more you can get educated about this, the better, in my judgment. We came together with that knowledge and said that we had to forge a plan that could pay for this system and building on that legacy and do it in a way in which 10, 20, 30 years in the future, oh, I guess we're there now. People would look back and say, I don't know what you did, but it seems to be working. Yes, it's expensive. We're all paying to make it happen, but our water quality is better. The systems that we have, the plants that we have are better. Brightwater is just off the charts in terms of its capacity to provide clean water. I think at the time it was setting a national standard, if not international standard, for what it did. And it also survived a $200 million lawsuit, and King County got every dollar of that, in terms of the sense that they didn't have to pay a nickel for the lawsuit. He got out of it because we'd done our work well. That comes back to you as well. You laid a foundation for work that could not be challenged where there would be any liability. So Robbinswood was really the linchpin for that. We came together, and I like to say that an old adage of don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good, that if you're going to be a regional leader, you have to I can say this now as an ex-elected official because it may rub you the wrong way. Don't come to those meetings and these meetings adhering to a framework of a mind frame that is first and main, because if you do, you'll never get to a regional solution. If you're going to be a regional leader, it's a big pond, and you have to come with a mindset that the region benefits. There are things that have to be protected, things that have to be understood, things that have to be worked out, but you have to come with a mindset of solving these problems and carrying that legacy of clean water forward. So that's the context of Robbinswood. We did have a benefit of the signatories who were real students of the game. I was on the committee. I was on the King County Council for 24 years. I think I was on the committee all of those years. I either chaired it or vice chaired it, I think, most of that time. My compatriot was Louise Miller, who was either chair or vice chair during that period of time as well. She's an old water commissioner, so she knew from the beginning these issues as it relates to capacity and service delivery and cost. She was a great student of the systems, and so we started with folks who really were willing to lean in and get smart and make some decisions. And I think looking back, I don't think anybody in the region regrets what we had to deal with. You have new issues, climate change being one. Others are raised during this presentation that we didn't have to wrestle with at the time. But I think anytime that you're managing growth, you're never done. It's growth management is not a static concept. It really needs to be flipped around and think of it in terms of active voice managing growth. And here you are again, having to deal with building a system for the future that meets the challenges of the time and paying for it. So that's my overall statement, and I'm happy to answer questions. I think the division and the work of the Regional Water Quality Committee on that legacy, I don't know if there's another jurisdiction in the United States that enjoys a better better history and a better capacity on a daily basis to meet the water quality challenges of the time. It's just an extraordinary place to call home in comparison to the rest of the country. Expensive, yes, but treasures definitely for all of us. Last thought, I grew up on the shores of Lake Washington, as I mentioned, as it turns out, on the same street that Jim Ellis grew up on, Shoreland Drive. We went to the same elementary school, but not at the same time, John Muir Elementary. Both of us had a deep appreciation for the waters of the area, both fresh and marine. My wife and I currently live literally above the Ballard Locks on the Magnolia side. And we look down on the locks at the point at which the fresh water of the Lake Washington system empties into the marine waters of Puget Sound. So these water quality issues are critically important to me, but I think I'm just representative of you and so many others who care about this issue deeply. And we're the beneficiaries of it and passing it on to a future generation. So Chair Balducci, happy to be with you, happy to answer any questions. I don't know if that waxed on too long, but that was the context of the time.
Thank you so much. No, it's so great to sort of cast our, like, first of all, to feel part of a continuum of work. We are definitely not alone in this. We are, and as you pointed out very eloquently, we benefit from prior generations' strong leadership, and the foundation that has been set is very helpful to us today. Can I just ask one follow-up question, and that is, as you went through the preparation, the meetings, singular or plural, and then the agreement itself, were there any real success factors you can think of that helped that group of folks come up with that agreement? Like, was there a moment of real compromise or anything that you can convey that we might try to replicate?
Sure. I think the most important thing is everybody needed to be transparent and lay their cards on the table. At the time, if there were interests who were tired of paying for I&I, which I get. I mean, if you haven't gotten that tutorial, wait till you get it. The amount of clean water we actually shove through the system and pay for as dirty water is extraordinary. The same with, folks who built the system, largely Seattle and the 8 jurisdictions around Lake Washington that paid buku bucks at the time to build the system, the regional system, say, well, hey, we're tired of paying for growth, and we ponied up at the beginning. Why do we have to keep doing this? The point is that not that they didn't articulate those interests, it's that when they got all done and heard everybody's interests, oh, the only way we're going to get somewhere is if we can strike a deal. And that was the overriding question for us ahead of Robbinswood and then at Robbinswood. This is all going to fall apart unless we understand each other's position and also understand that we're probably all going to have to give up something in order to get something more valuable. And so that transparency was really important, understanding what everybody had to say about it. And then work, spirit of goodwill, and a spirit of we need to take the next step and accomplish something that will stand the test of time. And I don't know if you all agree, but you look back on the early mid 90s and then what we were going through. I think this one did stand the test of time in terms of meeting the challenges, equitable, if not perfect payment system, and people's interests were accommodated. There were new things that had to be accomplished. The letter lays that out. And the challenge then was to us going to Olympia and getting some changes and then implementing what we agreed to. So there was real goodwill after the fact as well. But I would just say, talk amongst you. Another thing I would say, don't delay. I know some of this is, oh, we can keep going and we can keep putting this off. I don't believe that time on some of these major issues is your friend. Couple things. It's going to cost you a lot more the longer you delay. That's just the nature of things. And secondly, whoever's in this meeting today, next year and 2 years from now, 4 years is on, we're going to be lots of new people. And yes, they can come up to speed, but they may not find this to be the most important thing. And so delay is not your friend.
Yep.
But I say that also in the context of get smart. So you're seeing the department lead you through a process, all good. They've got a timeline out in front of you, all good. I suspect that there's a ton of good substantive work that's being done and revealed, all good. But delaying coming together at Soaring Eagle Park, which, by the way, Councilmember Balducci, you and I should talk about that, because I had a big hand in even making that park happen. But that was the Wayback Machine and dealing with it the different way. I hope I get invited to at least sit in the audience and watch it if you actually have it there.
Yeah.
But I would think that you should move on with some dispatch to get the decisions done and behind you and move on with the projects.
Thank you. It's super, super helpful. Others, questions, comments? All right. Commissioner Warren, please go ahead.
Thank you, Larry, for that perspective. I was around at the time and was the utilities director at Bellevue. It was contentious at the time, and there was agreement. I think that from what I remember at the time, the real focus was on the capacity charge and growth paying for growth. I mean, that was the bulk of the agreement, and how that was going to occur, and that did get accomplished and is a principle, I think, that stands the test of time. However, there were a lot of other things that were contentious and really didn't get well resolved at that time. It was kind of punted from my perspective. I submitted some questions to Cameron, which didn't get answered, so probably too much for this meeting. So another follow-up Cameron could follow up on. But the one I wanted to really focus on was the opening statement about one for all and all for one. Since over the last decades, I have heard people interpret that a lot, saying that that is a embedded principle in everything we do, and that individuals interpret it in different ways for different things. So kind of my question is, I saw it more as, I won't say a feel-good statement, that there was a lot of contention going into the agreement, and out of it was saying, well, we came together to help resolve this collectively. But it really wasn't institutionalized as a policy for the future. There are a number of elements that came out of the agreement that are outlined, but I really haven't seen any policy statements that said what that really means for the future. And yet I'm hearing it said all the time. So I'd be interested in somebody's observation on what that statement really means.
Well, it's probably a good thing that I can't remember who articulated it first, because it's the kind of statement that's probably pretty difficult to lay down in policy or code, but it is the kind of statement that allows elected leaders who are of goodwill and need to solve big problems, if they come to the table with that in mind, can actually get this stuff done. So one for all and all for one, if you will, leaves the first and main framework on the curb. So you're able to come together and say, you know, I'm in this and I got interest to represent, but my neighbors in Seattle too have interests that they've got to articulate, but, you know, come to the table and leave some of that at the curb, that thinking. And that's true for everyone. And there's a reason for this, is because if you're a suburban elected official or a Seattle elected official, county elected official, you got to take this back to your respective group. And you got to articulate why you did what you did, what you gave up, and what you got. And I think you can only do that effectively with your own set of commissioners or your own city council members or your own county council members, if they know that everybody who came together at a place like Robbinswood adopted this idea of one for all and all for one, and built on the legacy, if you will, Jim Ellis and the generation at the time that said, leaving Lake Washington, 26 miles of fresh water that we all love to utilize as a cesspool for future generations, is just not okay. And so one for all and one for all for one, built on that, less as something you could codify, but more as something you could hang on to, that the person sitting next to you who might have a different perspective than you is in the same place. They got to get there too. And so it allows you to fashion a solution or solutions that work over time. And these issues, as I said, come around again. Nobody that I'm witnessing here, there are some staffers here that are gotten as gray as I have that remember some of this. But I don't, and there's some members here that I think participated after the fact, but the signatories to that agreement are all gone in some sense. But I think they would all tell you that the spirit of all for one and one for all is what carried them through, and backed up by some, as I said earlier, some extraordinary staff work. The last thing I want to say about that, and there's nobody in public life. I started out as staff, and so I thought elected staff, you could get value from good staff work. But as elected, I really leaned on staff all the time, across the board, whatever the issues were. But here's the big but. There comes a point when you say thank you to your staff. You're not going to get between me and the other electeds in the room. The deal is going to be cut between the electeds. We're going to talk to each other. We're going to understand the issues. We're going to make the deal that goes forward. Thank you for your great work, but don't pull me back to first and main. We'll never get there if you do. So value staff work, but more I valued my fellow elected officials on the regional water quality and throughout the region on this and many other regional issues. That's the thing that stands the test of time, is when they come together, have a meeting of the minds and move on. So that's, to me, what one for all and all for one embodied.
And by the way, I'd be willing to host at Soaring Eagle since it's in my district.
Yeah, excellent.
Do you remember when it was called Section 36?
Mm-hmm.
Even better name for an agreement. One of the things I just want to reflect back on what you just said. I don't know, keep wanting to call you council member, Larry, Mr. Phillips.
You're fine.
Is the idea of everybody honestly and in good faith laying their interests on the table, because we really can only come to a place that we can feel that you got something worth getting even as you compromise something worth something to somebody else, if your interests are being met at some level, and to do that, we have to talk openly about those interests. And so in that sense, I hear all for one and one for all as a test, like a standard that we can measure our agreements against. Are we truly all getting something out of it? Are we truly all giving something? And is the outcome going to be worth all of it? So thank you for all of that. I want to call on Commissioner Clark next. His hand was up and then down and then up, and then Councilmember Lee.
Yeah, maybe a couple of comments. I think Larry's points are well taken on having some fundamental process, and the same thing the chair said, fundamental process to set some principles at the beginning. It is essential in the long run. I think the challenge is just how do you put the flexibility in to make adjustments over time, and to, as I think Lloyd said, to interpret some of that. Here's an example. When I was at Seattle, growth pays for growth. Well, we looked at capital projects and we thought, well, Seattle, if you convert the capital projects that pay for growth, we'll probably pay for about 25% of Brightwater, $500 million roughly. Well, the county's perspective was, we'll know that all those capital projects aren't part of the growth paying for growth, so you owe 45%. Well, now you're up to $1 billion. That's a major difference in opinion over what the amount you owe is, and the interpretation. And so how do we keep the transparency in the system to allow, when those kinds of issues arise, to be able to sit down and put your, as Larry said, put your cards on the table and get to a bottom line. I think really kudos to you over the last couple of years. I think the transparency, both in the department, but also with the RWQC, may be leading us to a place that we can build on the process that was set up at Robbinswood, and then add to it with some flexibility on how do we resolve differences as they go forward, because I think that's going to be the most critical. In today's age, particularly with politics, God only knows what's going to happen tomorrow. And things are changing so rapidly that we need to be nimble enough, I guess, to adjust as we go forward. And that would be my only cautionary tale, is just we've got to figure out some way to be open to those changes as we go forward.
Thank you, Commissioner. It's a really good point, and something of a challenge, how to build flexibility in while also building commitments in. I took a note to make sure we think about that.
Can I just add a little
Of course,
note there?
yeah, please,
Sure.
go ahead.
So virtually about the last thing I got to do in this arena in 2015 was the federal consent decree, and it was contentious. And I was an advocate for wrapping it up and getting on with it. But I said at the time, and this is in the spirit of Commissioner Clark's perspective, while we commit to these projects and then in some form the payment of them, what we build and the sequence in what they're built and how they're built over time could be adjusted. Not that we would back away from the outcomes or back away from finding a way to pay for it, but adjusting them as needed relative to new information and, rate shock and everything else. But again, that's transparency. So you commit yourself to these projects, but you may also find better ways to do them, better sequencing, and as you say, different ways of having to come up with the coin to pay for it. Just give you one. I mentioned I live in Magnolia, but we're in Ballard a lot, and if that interceptor is not online, it will be very soon. It parallels basically Leary Way, between Leary Way and the Ship Canal. A lot of people have waited a long time for that interceptor to be in place. And it actually, as I understand it, goes underneath the Ship Canal to connect to West Point, right around the corner from where we live. But anyway, that project's now done and not yet paid for, but I'll give you a little tutorial on the locks. The Ballard Locks is the busiest locks in the United States, busier than any locks on the Mississippi or the Missouri or the Great Lakes or the tributaries around the country. Not because of commerce, but because of recreational boaters. And we see it all the time. It's fascinating to watch. But those boaters and everybody that comes to Locke are real glad that interceptor's in place, because now that water's cleaner and better. And we are better as a community as a consequence of that. So again, make the adjustments, be open to as you go forward, but don't back away from the standard of trying to improve water quality locally and regionally as you do so. That's just my take on what Commissioner Clark had to say. So.
Thank you. Councilmember Lee, I'm going to give you the last question.
Thank you. Well, it's what a wonderful insight into the pragmatic way of being a effective elected officials. You are making, if you're making, I have a question for you. If you're making the decision today, knowing what we are, the new paradigm, the dynamic we have in the community, what would you advise us to be aware of, and so that we can overcome the differences that we may be talking about, we may see, to actually get your passion, your inspiration to get done. Like, we did with Jim Alice. He inspired everybody with the public, without a dependency on government. And he was able to convince government and people like you to, make it happen. So he's the father of Forward Thrust, and he deserved rightfully. So what insight do you have to share to help us to make it happen today?
So I think that the easiest thing to in terms of answering that is, when it comes to clean water, the public's expectation here in King County is off the charts. I mean, you have a public that doesn't want to tolerate dirty water. It doesn't want to put up with excuses why we can't make it better. And that is in the context of having to pay for it. So if you have something that's sort of bedrock as you move forward, is the public may not understand King County's wastewater treatment division, or even know that there are 3 treatment plants out there that serve the region. They may not know where the sewer lines are, what a CSO, like that's way past the average person's sort of interest or understanding. But they do care about the fact that you, and collectively all of you, are doing something about making sure this system continues to operate well and that they get clean water. And you just can't escape that. I've been through meeting after meeting after meeting where we would tell people, did you know, because again, in transparency, we have this thing called CSOs, and a fair number, because we live in a rainy part of the world, a fair number of days a year, we dump raw sewage into your waterways. What? That's got to stop. And that wasn't 1 or 2 environmentalists. That was just people coming to a meeting or whatever it was, and that was a topic. This, whether you're a boater or a swimmer or a sailor, or just someone who enjoys looking at the waters of the Northwest, that is just bedrock. And so if I have to tell you one thing that should sustain you moving forward, the public's behind you. I'm not disputing the fact that it can be expensive. Again, that's back to Commissioner Warren. Be transparent, talk about it, what kind of adjustments, to your point, Commissioner Clark, we can make. But that spirit of wanting to have clean water is just, it's just etched in our DNA. So.
Well, thank you again. Thank you so much, Larry, for coming, for spending all this time with us, for sharing. Yeah, and we may call you back when things are a little like when we're deeper into it. Say like, how did you handle it when this happened? And so we know where to reach you. Thank you again so much for all your leadership for the region. We benefit from it all every day, and we're grateful for you.
Happy to be with you. Have a great time. Enjoy all of you. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. As always, members, the last item on the agenda is just a quick review of the work program ahead. Not a lot of changes this month, but based on our discussions last month, I asked staff to add 2 check-in updates on federal funding, which we will take up later in the year. Who knows where federal funding will be when those roll around, but we will take them up. And then for our March meeting, we will have a briefing on the capital program delivery, which I mentioned earlier. And we're tentatively scheduled to get an overview of the Lower Duwamish consent decree. And it's really great news. Many members and staff have signed up for one of the 2 site visits to the Georgetown Wet Weather Treatment Facility on March 7th. I'll be going in the morning, and a group of us will go in the afternoon. Look forward to seeing you all there. And staff will begin planning for a May or June tour to West Point as well, for those who are interested in going and seeing West Point, especially after they've implemented that battery storage project, which has really improved the electrical reliability and management at West Point. So that's it. That's what I have for work program. Any questions about the work program? All right. Hearing none, that brings us to the end of our meeting. Is there anything else for the good of the order? Go ahead, Councilmember Sweet.
Sorry, having trouble with my Zooms and stuff.
Gotcha.
I just wanted to add a comment that I really loved what Larry just took us through. I love the history. I kind of can connect with the all for one and one for all. At the same time, what's missing for me is the connection of all of this work to our fiscal policies for the future. And somehow I have to separate it from agreements that were made in 1980.
Sure. Right.
Right. So I'm not done having the conversation about that as we move forward. And as we already indicated, we're a little shaky on the financial policy piece of the resolution that we voted on earlier. So I do believe that there is more conversation that needs to happen around this issue. We're not talking just about I&I anymore. We're talking about stormwater costs and impacts that are way beyond anything they were thinking about in the past. We're talking about the fact that we've got a hundreds-year-old system versus brand new systems in Carnations and in cities that are building all these out right now. So it's not, I just don't think we're done yet.
Oh, no. And let me disabuse anybody of the notion that this was meant to just say, good job, Robbinswood. We just sort of like keep doing like, I think we're kicking off a discussion about what is the evolution of Robbinswood for this era with our problems, with our challenges. And I'll just say it again. I know I'm repeating myself, but I really do think that it's just those kinds of interests. Like there are different jurisdictions all around the region. We have the same big picture interest in clean water, but our specific needs, our ability to pay is different. And of course, I think there's a little bit of, I heard the word transparency a lot. I think that is a key thing that we're all going to have to grapple with together is when will this group as leaders on this issue feel that we have enough transparency to say, okay, like a lot of the costs, I feel people are interested to understand more what the cost drivers are, don't fully understand them all. And that makes it hard to say, yes, I agree that I will pay my fair share of X if you don't fully understand all the components of X. So there's a lot.
Thanks for that.
I want to validate what you said. Thank you. All right. Councilmember Lee, we're a little over time. Can you wrap us up?
I'll make it quick. I fully agree with the conversation of financial importance. That's why I appreciate Chair Balducci's effort to raise the federal funding on the top of our agenda. And we're going to work very hard, to convince the federal government that the solution is, and in order to do that, we have to get the region to come together, which means exactly what you're talking about. We have to have passion, we have to be transparent, we have to agree to it, then go where the money is and get it. Thank you.
It's a longer term thing, as I've said, especially keeping in mind last week, the administration tried to shut off all federal dollars to grants like ours. But we will continue. All we can do is put one foot in front of the other and keep going. We have no choice. We have to succeed. All right. Anything else? Hearing nothing, we have completed our meeting and this meeting is adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.